especially in this society, there is so much shame and so much stigma wrapped up in people's ability to manage their finances. And in order to get a good start on your personal finance journey, we first have to work through that.
In the Merriman Financial Literacy Program, is there anything specifically offered at the program, or anything that you do as a counselor that you would say specifically helps deal with anxiety or depression, or kind of the shame associated with kind of failing at budgeting and stuff like that?
I would say just the fact that we have a peer mentor program is huge, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have an online resource, but we're not just directing people to that online resource. The fact that we have actual physical peer mentors who have been trained, who can meet with you one-on-one and go over these things, I think that's really impactful to have. Not only a peer mentor, but like another student, right? Like, we're all students here.
And like some camaraderie.
Exactly,
almost.
camaraderie. Because a lot of times we'll be going through these peer mentoring sessions, and people will share these things that they maybe feel guilty about, or they feel embarrassed by. And you know what? I've been in the same situation.
Welcome back to the Centsible Steps podcast. This is episode 3. I'm Ethan, your host.
I'm Forrest, and today we're with Effie from the Merriman Financial Literacy Program.
I'm going to be talking with Effie from the program about financial wellness, education, and common student experiences here at Western. Effie, can you share a little bit about yourself? How did you get into finance? How did you get into the MFLP program?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I never ever saw myself going into finance. In high school, I was thinking about going to college, and I thought I might major in philosophy, which I think is about the furthest you could get from finance.
Yeah.
And so I'm not entirely certain how I found myself in the business college, but I did, and I think I was taking some GURs, that sort of thing. I took a macroeconomics class, and I enjoyed it. I think my dad had always told me that if he didn't do what he is doing now, which is he's a speech and language pathologist, he would have gone on to become a financial planner. And as he raised me, he's very interested in personal finance, and he shared a lot of things with me. At a younger age, I thought it was really boring. So he'd show me, he'd be like, look, Effie, come look at this compound interest graph. And I'm like, all right, whatever, Dad. Like, I don't really understand what these numbers mean. But as I got older and into later in high school, and I got my first job, I started working, I came to have an appreciation for money. I understood what the value of a dollar is, what it can actually buy, and then thinking about, okay, how can I grow this wealth over time, became really interesting to me. And there's a lot of different cool methods you can use. My dad opened a Roth IRA for me as a custodial account when I started my job. So I was putting money into that even before I really understood what it was. And then once I figured out what it was and I learned how much compound growth that can generate for you, because it's a tax-advantaged account, I was like, wow, those numbers are really cool. Those numbers are really big.
Yeah. Did you learn that after the microeconomics class?
No,
before?
so this was in high school.
Ooh.
Yeah, this was back in high school as I was getting into personal finance. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. And so already it was becoming sort of a hobby of mine. I started learning about it, reading books about the subject, that sort of thing. And then I took a personal finance class my senior year. Then I came to Western. I took another personal finance class because I just really enjoyed the material. And then I was kind of at a point where I was like, man, it's getting close to the end of my freshman year. I should probably figure out what I'm going to major in. And I don't really know. But in the back of my head was my dad, who was like, I'd always wanted to become a financial planner. And I thought, maybe that's something I could do. So I signed up for the finance major. I started taking classes. I enjoyed it. And now that's my chosen career path is what hopefully will happen, what I'm working towards.
Nice.
My sophomore year, I was very involved with the Financial Management Association Club. And that's kind of how I found out about the Merriman Financial Literacy Program, which was just getting started at that time. It was in its infancy, right? They're still getting the ball rolling. So I heard about it, I reached out, I was like, hey, I'm really interested. This is exactly what I'm passionate about. This is what I'm interested in. I'd already been kind of like helping my friends and educating my friends about personal finance stuff, just because it gets me really excited. And then the program got started, they brought me on as a peer mentor, and we got to work.
Wow, awesome. And that was last year?
Yeah, so that was towards the end of last year. We started the program, and now we're in our full efforts of trying to get the marketing and word out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we're here too, Ethan, right?
Yeah, that's our job. Yeah.
And you're doing a
Spread
great
the
job
word.
at it.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. I hope we really like the program. We really want it to succeed. You know, for the theme of this episode, we wanted to talk a lot more about mental health because the Merriman Financial Literacy Program seems to us to be more of almost kind of like a therapy-like opportunity for students who are learning about financing. And you're a peer mentor. From your experience whilst working in the program here at Western, have you seen whilst working in the program that your efforts have helped students mentally? Have you seen that among students there actually is maybe a kind of a mental health crisis associated with finance, that students, you know, are just entering the world and it's also stressful and it's overwhelming? What's the impact on students here at Western?
Absolutely. I'd say there's a very large impact. And I'd say it's good that you noted the emotions of personal finance and sort of tackling that first. Because when people think of personal finance, they think of all the technical stuff, right? The numbers, the Roth IRAs, the accounts, all that sort of stuff. But
Exactly.
it really starts with your emotions and your feelings surrounding it. Because, especially in this society, there is so much shame and so much stigma wrapped up in people's ability to manage their finances. And in order to get a good start on your personal finance journey, we first have to work through that and undo that and work through it in order to kind of get to the more technical stuff and have it be as effective, right? Because I can teach you the different techniques and things like that, but if you're getting blocked by your emotions, you're not going to be able to apply those as effectively, right?
So there's a huge element here to emotional intelligence and the ability of our mentors on campus even to help us become more self-aware.
Absolutely.
And emotionally aware.
100%. I think that is extremely necessary for managing your personal finance.
It's step one, it seems like,
Yeah.
for us now.
I just gave a workshop on it about a week ago, the emotions of personal finance, because we do a lot of the technical kind of, come to this workshop, we'll teach you the basics. We do a lot of that. But this is very important to work through as well.
Yeah, definitely. And our survey last week, too, we've been running our student survey. We've noticed that about 68% associate their emotional state with, we gave them one-word answers, but anxious, uncertain.
Those are tough words, especially that hopeless one. That's not a fun one to hear. How do you think, how in the Merriman Financial Literacy Program, is there anything specifically offered at the program or anything that you do as a counselor that you would say specifically helps deal with anxiety or depression or kind of the shame associated with kind of failing at budgeting and stuff like that?
I would say just the fact that we have a peer mentor program is huge, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have an online resource, but we're not just directing people to that online resource. The fact that we have actual physical peer mentors who have been trained, who can meet with you one-on-one and go over these things, I think that's really impactful to have. Not only a peer mentor, but like another student, right? Like we're all students here. And
Like
so
some camaraderie.
Exactly,
almost.
camaraderie. Because a lot of times we'll be going through these peer mentoring sessions and people will share these things that they maybe feel guilty about or they feel embarrassed by. And you know what? I've been in the same situation, right? Okay, like for example, a little while ago I had a Xfinity tech come visit my house because the Wi-Fi was on the fritz. And I tried everything. I was going through the app, I was unplugging, replugging the power, and I couldn't figure it out. So I was like, ah. So I called the Xfinity tech over, right? He comes over, he looks at the box, and he's like,
Of course.
Yeah, it just wasn't quite plugged in at the actual box. And then I got charged like $100 for that visit.
That's fun.
And I felt so dumb. But
did he give you anything to work with? Any sense of like, oh, thanks for warming it up for me? Or
he was very sweet. He was kind about. We had a good conversation. I think I gave him a snack on the way out. It's like, please have a nice day. I appreciate you. But the point here is that everyone makes those mistakes. No one is perfect. We all slip up, and we all have these things to work through. And so in the peer mentoring sessions, I try to relate my experiences and say, hey, I know you feel guilty about this, but trust me, you're not alone.
And that's huge, right? Like that feels for me. I feel heard and seen, right? Just in that sense of understanding that we are emotional creatures. We're deeply socialized to relate to each other in this language of money, but also in emotions, which comes before money.
Yeah.
We connect with each other at an emotional level unconsciously and without any control, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that it's especially in where we live in today, in this setting, like we're less interested in physical or digital interactions, and we're needing to connect deeply and for a purpose.
Absolutely.
I think this is the most purposeful like business program that we're offering at the moment.
I think people are getting a little fed up with all of the digital connection that we're experiencing, because we have so much, but it doesn't feel like it's actually doing enough for us, right?
No.
And we try to make our services as accessible as possible, so we can do online appointments and that sort of thing. But I always really prefer the in-person ones because I feel like I'm able to connect with the individual so much more.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you're doing too, I think, is especially outside of the moment that you're giving that physical support too, like this relates to their work. And like we've mentioned with like wealth building and the power of financial freedom, it's like a philosophy of life. We're really helping people navigate that for themselves and decide their futures, which is
huge.
It's really meaningful work.
That's what I love about it so much. I love my job because this is just the most fulfilling work I've ever experienced. I've held different retail jobs, that sort of thing. I worked in a grocery store, record store.
Yeah.
But working as a peer mentor, working with students, and knowing that I'm actually making an impact in their life, like this is actually making a difference, both right now and in the far future. This is all I ever really want to do.
And that's really powerful to have somebody who's really passionate about what they do in any environment, but especially in counseling. I think that's really important. It gives that edge
Absolutely.
that you need.
No one's phoning it in here, right? Like we're all very passionate about it.
Yeah, we care. I think our generation cares a lot.
Absolutely.
A lot.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That it does seem like a generational thing, at least for the Zoomers, that the emotional attachment has become far more important. I think it's almost kind of like there's been a reaction from our generation based on the attitudes of previous ones, where it almost kind of seems like there was an adoption of this coldness that emotions, like feelings, don't matter or something like that.
Yeah, especially not in the workplace, right?
Right.
No way can you be sensitive.
And also like a sense of individuality
is
what we've inherited. And I think we're trying to move past the like, oh, we should be 100% self-sufficient. I need to do everything myself. No, we have community. Community support is necessary.
Yeah.
It's actually not possible to do everything by ourselves.
No, it's not in our nature to be alone at all.
And it's sort of like, in the places where things matter most, like your job, where it's like this is where you make a living, this is how you survive. It's like that's where the way we feel matters most.
100%.
We spend so much of our time, put so much of our energy into that. It's such a huge part of our life.
It feels like that's the community contribution. Like outside of the personal work that you're able to, I guess like develop yourself for the benefit of others, but also the work that you're doing, like with what we do in marketing, ideally, is this team-based organization that serves the community at a scale that is like expansive across culture. But it's gotten dicey, and like I think that you're onto something with like generation zeal is what I've been saying, like passion.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah,
Generation zeal.
we're zealous, right? Like we care, and I think it's a reaction to the distancing I think we've felt from each other. So we're just coming back home.
Especially living through the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen how important human connection is.
Yeah, we're just coming back home to understand each other in relation to our friends and accountability buddies,
Absolutely.
which is kind of what I see my peer mentor with.
Absolutely.
MFLP.
Excellent. That's another thing is as a accountability buddy. What I like about the peer mentoring sessions is you can choose who you want to sign up with, and then you can book multiple appointments with them. And so, all of people I meet with once a quarter, and if you wanted to meet every couple of weeks, like we could do that as well.
Yeah.
And I really like having those sustained relationships. I find that's very impactful.
Yeah, meeting people where they're at.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the Merriman Financial Literacy Program is a very good program for Western to expand that community feeling. I think that sometimes students don't really have that sense that Western is a community. And so when dealing with something as intimate as financing, for the school to actually provide an effective program with real people and students, I think that can help build community.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, Forrest, you had your own personal experiences.
Oh,
with
very much
the
so.
program,
Yeah.
and so I think a nice place to move forward is asking your own emotional well-being. Did you feel that by going to the program and talking to your mentor that elevated your emotional state at all?
I think I went in there hoping for that.
Mm.
Yes. Some sense of I'm not alone in this, I think, is the overwhelming feeling or like benefit that I was expecting or hoping to get out of my first session. And I walked away with that entirely, but I also realized a lot of the weaknesses that I hold that needed to be pointed out, or that were just pointed out naturally. And that was that was fearful and scary in the moment. I think those were the emotions there. But overall, hopeful, right? And I think that's the feeling that I have right now as well. Is hopeful, in broad respect of my own finance,
Good.
but also with how we can connect people with meaningful work. And I think that's just how I feel.
Mm.
And I think it's hard to talk about that. It's really hard to talk about how I feel. And as aware as I can be, also communicating that to other people is vulnerable, right?
Especially with the intimacy of your finances.
Ooh, the most, right? Super vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have much money. There's not much to hide. I mean, I got bills to pay, rent's due
Right.
today, whatever. But yeah, it's like separating my worth from my net worth is challenging because I care about my work. I am emotional, naturally, and I don't know always how to handle that. I don't know what the difference is or how to sort it out. And there's shame, just immense shame.
Absolutely. That's a big one that is associated with finances for sure.
Yeah, because it feels I haven't done enough, right?
So think about this. When you feel intense shame surrounding a subject, whatever it may be, but for a lot of people, that includes your finances, doesn't that make it so much harder to look at that?
Oh, so
And it makes it so much harder just to start and just to get over that initial hurdle, is what I found with the things I feel shameful about.
I just want to avoid it.
Exactly. You want to avoid it. You want to don't think about it. Don't look at it. And that's kind of what we are here to do, is say, okay, let's get over that initial shame hurdle. Let's look at it together in a safe environment where you won't be judged. And I try to create an environment, a judge-free space, right? And we look at it. We do the hard thing. We look at the numbers. We talk through it. We get over that initial hump. And then once you've done that, I find that it can be a little bit easier because you're okay. It's even comforting just to know where you're at.
Yeah, and you're able to set goals too. So I have this reaction to this catastrophic budget, or this the worst thing I could ever do is to look at or plan my budget, right? But then we're able to set goals together.
Mm-hmm.
Even 2 positive goals outweigh that single worst case scenario that maybe I'm in the midst of with a peer mentor helping me.
And
But
did
I
that
think
generate some motivation as well?
100%. And I think the goals, right? Those positive, future forward, hopeful states are kind of
And then
driving
you
us
have
through.
tangible actions that you can take to better off your financial well-being.
Mm.
And that feels good.
So is the value of the mentor for you, Forrest, that really kind of allowed you to take action on your finances? Is it that you have this person who's kind of pushing you? Is it this person who's giving you structure
Ooh,
that really helped you?
that's a good question.
What do you think?
Yeah. I feel overwhelmingly supported by the program and by my mentor, which allows me to face myself, if that makes sense, which is the shame. That's number 1 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think having steps to go resolve that for myself, homework, right? Go on iGrad, work through these things. That's the path that we can lay out together. But I think the first and biggest benefit is having somebody there to support you, hold space for seemingly unbearable emotions.
Mm.
That's what I feel like.
Absolutely. And I also want to note that it looks different for everyone, right? And one of the things in our peer mentoring sessions is we don't just apply the same standards to everyone. We don't give everyone the exact same advice, right? Or the exact same tools. We talk to them to figure out what will work for them. right? So a question that I'll ask in my peer mentoring sessions is, how do you do your homework? Like, what gets you to do your homework? What puts you in a state where you can get that done? Because, I mean, I have trouble doing my homework.
Yeah.
But I have things that I do that make it easier, like listening. I have a certain album that will just put me right in the right trance, right?
Yeah.
To get my stuff done. If we can, I'll oftentimes ask that question because it helps me piece together, okay, you might not want to do your homework. Here's what helps you do that. You might not want to do your finances. Maybe we could apply those same things. And it looks different for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And like self-soothe at some level, right? Like,
Absolutely.
like our work and our day-to-day is like, we have to do that continuously.
Yeah. And that's the other challenge with personal finance, right? Is it's not a one and done. It's a relationship that you have for the rest of your life.
Ooh, true.
Yeah.
Well said.
And that makes it tricky because when you fall off the horse, so to speak, maybe you miss your budget for a week, it can be difficult to climb back on. And we're here to support you with that.
Wow. Yeah, there's cycles of this, for sure.
Absolutely.
It almost appears that the financial industry and the banking industry and everything that has to do with money has sort of lost its human touch. You know, it's like things have become a bit inhumane. You know, very complicated vocabulary, numbers and graphs everywhere. People really don't do well with numbers, and it sort of messes with their psyche.
It can be confusing, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's almost like a different language.
It is.
Like coding.
Yeah.
At least that's what, especially specifically investing, saving, budgeting, that sort of thing, it's a little bit easier, but investing feels like it's a whole nother language to me. But absolutely. And I think there's a reason for that, right? And the reason is that the more complex people in charge make these financial systems, the more money there is to be made off of people who don't fully understand them.
Knowledge is power.
Exactly. So we have to self-educate to be able to move through that sort of thing. A simple example is like a car loan, right? So oftentimes car dealers will say, let's put you on this auto loan. Let's decrease your monthly payment, right? We'll get your monthly payment as low as possible, something that you can afford. Well, if you don't crunch the numbers out, what they're doing is extending the period of time that you're making those payments and adjusting the interest rate such that you end up paying far more in the long run. Not everybody knows how to do those calculations.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And they benefit from us not knowing.
Yeah, they make money off of it. Absolutely. And so my job is to try to boil things down, make it simpler, put it into terms that you can understand.
Yeah.
Right? Eliminate the jargon.
Yeah. The jargon. I mean, it's like coded.
Yeah.
Almost, right? Like
Right?
like you say, you made the connection to a different language, and it seems that it is, but is there a way that we can use those codes, I guess, or that system, let's say,
We can learn it.
to restructure
Absolutely.
eventually?
I hope so. I think we're experiencing a cultural shift, right? Especially when we're talking about kind of the values surrounding money. I think people are slowly becoming more comfortable discussing their finances with their peers. I specifically see that people talk about their rent prices, and people are very open about their wages. What do you two find in terms of people discussing money talk?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'll say it because it's helpful to just even have it. I pay $650 for a single bedroom, no closet, in South Hill, which is remarkable. Crazy. I make $30 an hour as an independent contractor, so it's a little less. I pay my own taxes. And I think that it is like becoming safe to say these things.
Absolutely. And back in the day, there were times when you weren't even allowed to talk about your wages. You could get fired for that.
Yeah.
And what did that do? That led to systemic inequality. Women were getting paid less than men for the same jobs, and no one was the wiser.
Yeah, it's definitely a generational thing. I remember my father, when I remember being a little kid and asking him how much money he meant, and like he just told me, Ethan, that is a very disrespectful thing to ask a man.
Don't ask that,
I
son.
was like, well, all right. It's like even now to this day, I'm like, I don't know. I'm not going to tell you. I'm like,
Right?
this? Why do you want to know? Because it is, I think, it is a measuring game.
Yeah.
It can, and a lot of times their salaries, their net worth could be tied to their value.
Yeah, it's like airing out your dirty laundry.
It is,
I don't want you
exactly.
to see my underwear drawer.
No, never.
Yeah.
Right?
It's hard. But I do think overall, though, like, I talk about it with my friends. They ask, and I will happily answer.
And
I'm
what does that do?
curious.
It's a benefit, right? It helps each other.
It honestly raises our bargaining power.
Absolutely.
Like, collectively, we now have a higher position in the negotiation of whatever that is. If it's finding a new apartment, if it's finding a house that you're trying to buy. Like, knowing what, and especially in the workplace, and yeah, with like kind of the crisis going on in terms of like organizational leadership, I would say, is like knowledge is power, and like by sharing, we're able to help each other.
Absolutely.
And I think that is a big point of the Merryman Financial Literacy Program, is that through education, and this is, I think, from my understanding of Merryman himself, that his motivation was to educate students because he, while working in the industry, acknowledged that a lot of people were basically getting screwed over, and the largest expense is ignorance, basically.
Yeah,
for the
and they're
company.
financial planners that aren't really making much
Right,
money.
like their own. You know, there's this feeling that the very people employed to help us are also just kind of stealing out of our back pockets.
Almost grifting us.
Right.
Yeah.
And that the Merryman Financial Literacy Program it's a different culture, it's a different vibe, and I think the idea that your financial advisor is a counselor who intimately knows you and cares about you on a human level, I think removes that more slimier element. And we to get a little bit more philosophical and deeper, that I think that through education and through just literacy, we can expect more justice in the society. We talk about bargaining power, that we no longer approach landlords or employers or schools or even hospitals who charge high medical bills. We don't approach in ignorance anymore. And we have higher expectations, and that comes down to education. People like you informing the public about what is normal, what is right, and it creates the environment for reciprocity. The give and take in society. That you do good upon me, I'll do good upon you. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah,
I agree with that, right?
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love reciprocity and also emotions.
It's Forrest's favorite word.
Yeah, it is. And
Yeah.
I think it can be, it's in our nature to reciprocate kind actions and to punish unjust, unkind behavior.
I mean, it's the nature of karma, right?
Exactly.
Like the more good you put into the world, the more comes back to you.
Exactly.
It's great.
And it can be, I definitely subscribe to spiritual interpretations of that, but from like a purely social scientist perspective, like we're hardwired to seek, to not even seek, it's just an emotional response to like for justice, right? And we don't even have to do anything, it just happens naturally. But I think we're able to extend this reciprocal relationship of sharing that we know through emotional connection is what we do innately. Mm-hmm. We reciprocate, we connect, we mirror each other. And I believe that with the system starting to be more empathetic towards the suffering that we all face individually and now very much collectively, we can design our systems to not become regenerative and reciprocate the human value that we're sharing.
Absolutely. And people are seeing that. People are making the change. I'm glad you brought up Paul's experience in the industry and what he saw there, and which led him to the path to kind of create these free resources for people. And I do want to note that, like, we aren't in this to make money. Like, we are here to provide free resources to students and the community to help them with this stuff. And I think that's important to point out, because I think there is kind of a general sense of people in the financial industry can be a little scummy, can be a little dirty. And that's not what we are.
No.
We try to be the antithesis of that.
Change makers.
Exactly.
Changing the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of our episode here.
Yeah, it was a good episode. It was
Mm-hmm.
nice to have you on here, Effie. I think it was the emotional aspect of things. I think people are very nowadays driven to, and I think that if we can get to students and show them that not only isn't finance scary, but it's also a time to be more open about how they feel, I think people will be really attracted to the program, MFLP.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Effie.
All right.
Thank you, Effie. Thanks for sharing space and holding it for us.
Thank you.
Awesome. And that will do it for the Sensible Steps podcast, episode 3. We'll talk to you guys next time.